Hey guys, today's video was inspired by one of you out there who left a comment. So let's see what it has to do with 3D printing and segments. Okay, so a couple videos ago, I talked about the Ender Neo Max, and I just purchased this, started working on stuff on there. And I said that, I was making a point as to why 3D printers are good for your shop. And you come up with these ideas, and I look at it as an organization type thing. But then somebody left a comment, as a matter of fact, it was Jim, and he left informative and timely. I've been thinking seriously about getting a 3D printer. Do you think this model is accurate enough to make wedgies? Are there any special techniques required to get the angle that's dead on? And I thought, I never thought about making a wedgie from this thing for using for segment turning. And if you need to know what wedgies are used for segment, you can look up here and there's a video for that. But I decided to try it out. So it's actually printing one. I designed some segments, different angles, and made some cuts. So let's see how they turned out. All right, so the first thing I do is I come here into SketchUp, and I have my base wedgie here, which I designed. I made one piece that is the thickness that I want and the length that I want, and now I just have to enter in the angle that I want here. So for this one, we're going to make a 20 segmented bowl. So we need to take 360 degrees and divide that by 20, because it's the number of segments that I want. 360 divided by 20 is 18. Then you divide that in half, which is 9 degrees. So I need a 9-degree angle on each side here. So in SketchUp, I have a protractor here that I can clip on this end, bring it out, click again, and then I move up and I just type in 9 degrees. And this gives me a 9-degree angle. I'm going to do the same thing down here, except this time go straight out on the red line and then come down and go 9 degrees there. So now I can make a line, and I'm just going to click there and here, and I'm going to click here. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a line here, and then I'm going to use, in SketchUp, it's a push-pull tool, and I bring that down all the way, and it deletes that, and now I have my base segment of 9 degrees. And I'll just clean up these lines here. So you can leave it like this. I'm going to put the dimensions. I'll show you what I end up, and I'm going to make it a little bit lighter, but you could leave it like this, and that would work just perfectly fine. That's your segment. I added this little groove down the center here to be a line up piece, and then it stops right here where I will put my numbers. So in the end, it looks like this here. And let me just move this one out of the way. So this is what I ended up with, and I just got a little fancier on it, but I wanted some bevel edges to make it easier to grab. I wanted an opening here to make it easier to grab, to pull it up and out of the wedgie tray, or the wedgie jig. And then I added 20 segments, and it's 9 degrees, just so I know what all that is. And then I just keep going and building these. So once these are made, I'm going to take these on over the 3D printer. Let's check that out. So here at the printer, this is the normal speed that it prints at. And of course, I speed it up here so you guys don't have to watch the whole thing. But if I remember right, it took about 8 to 9 hours, depending on the wedgie, to print them out. Now for this, I am using the Ender 3D Max because it does have a much larger print bed than the Ender 3. But once they're finished printing, head on over to the table saw. Alright, so at the table saw, I'm going to be using my wedgie sled, and I just take and set the wedges in there and adjust the wedgie sled to fit that. Then I just start making all of my cuts. Now I'm setting all of these pieces at the same distance, and you're going to notice that as we get different angles on this, that the pieces are going to be a little bit longer and a little bit larger, and that should make for an interesting bowl. Now in my prototype ones, I did find that I had a little bit of a problem, which I will talk about again later, but they were designed a little bit too thin, so I made them a little beefier with a little bit more plastic used, but I think it gives it a solid connection between the fence of the wedgie sled and the wedgie itself. I ended up making 5 different wedgies. I made a 12, a 15, a 16, an 18, and a 20. And I also made another one since then, a 24, which I haven't cut yet. So let's just finish up watching these being cut. All right, so here are the segments that I cut out, and you saw that how I used them on the saw there with those videos before. So let's start out with the 12 segment piece. And so I made this one, and the angle is 15 degrees, and I set it, and I did all of this in SketchUp. So that's what I used to design these. And the 12 segment came out perfect. There's no gaps. Everything looks really good. Nice and solid on the whole thing. And this is, I actually cut all of them the same distance just to see how that would turn out. So that's the 12 segment. And then the next one I made was a 15 segment. Now, these got rather thin, and I found that when they're thin, they flex a little bit. And especially when my fence stopped right here, it would flex it. So it didn't hurt this one when I made my segments here. I accounted for that and didn't push on the fence too hard. But again, here's the segment, nice and solid. Everything's nice and tight, fits perfectly, works really well. 16 segment, and again, same thing. Everything fit together really well. No gaps there, ready for glue up. And you can see that there's a size difference as we get more and more pieces, makes it a much larger ring. Should actually just stack them up like this so you can see how they actually grow. And then the 18 segment one, and again, very tight, very little gaps. Then when I got to the 20 segment, this angle was narrow enough where this really flexed quite a bit. So I created a new design, which is actually the design that I'll have on my website if you want to purchase the STL files for these. So they're nice and thick, so there's no flex in them at all. And the ring comes out much larger. And again, nice and tight, no gap. So everything fits together perfectly on all of these. And I'll just stack them up so that you can see. And you can see, of course, that as I made them, they get smaller and smaller with less segments. Each time you have less segments. So you could make a bowl at that. Of course, these aren't going to line up because all the segments are going to be different numbers. But it might be kind of cool to do. So in answer to your question, Jim, is this accurate enough to make these pieces? And yes, it is. I like to have the gap in between because I thought I'd use less filament that way. And so when I designed it that way. But once you make these thicker, there's no play. Once it becomes where there's no play, especially as you get thinner ones, they're going to butt up against the centerpiece here. And so there'd be little to no play, well, absolutely no play at all. And these are really, really accurate. I used them on the sled, and then I would use it with a angle, so I could find out the angle to make sure that they were right. And the angle that I used in SketchUp to design these is the perfect angle. It's exactly what it reads on the angle finder there. So yes, you can make, hopefully these all stay together because they're not glued, you can make segment rings using 3D printer. And it makes the wedgies really cheap, and you can do any ones you want. You know, you can do in-between numbers. Now, all these numbers here, it works evenly when divided into 360. But, you know, I'm going to make a 48. I'm going to make even a 60, maybe even a 75. I mean, you can go as high as you want as long as you can get the angle close enough. And of course, as they get down closer, you'll notice that the angles change, and it gets less and less of a degree, or less noticeable between the next one to it. And eventually you get sort of almost just a straight piece on there. But hopefully you found this interesting. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. That helps out tremendously. And I'm going to go ahead and cut me up some more segments and turn a bowl and see how it all comes out. Thanks for watching. Hope you're around for the next video. Take care.